Nia Griffith is the Shadow Defence Secretary, and she joins me now. Good evening, Nia Griffith.
Good evening.
First of all, let's talk about this confusion over Trident. There was a line in the leaked draft manifesto: any Prime Minister should be extremely cautious about ordering the use of weapons of mass destruction, but it disappeared from the official version. Why was that?
Well, I think what's very clear in both the draft version that was leaked and the final version is that we are fully committed to having a Trident nuclear deterrent. And it's not appropriate to go into detail about exactly how and when you might use it in a manifesto. The point is that we have it, and a deterrent is there to be used.
So you have a deterrent, it is there to be used. So it is going to be part of a strategic defence review. Do you think that's a good idea?
We're very clear about the review. When we have a review coming into government, it is about exactly how we would spend money and what we would be doing, in what order we'd be doing it, what sort of timetable. What it's not about is actually questioning whether we would have a Trident nuclear deterrent, because we settled that last year.
Well, Emily Thornberry tonight on LBC seemed to suggest that actually it was possible that it could be scrapped as part of the strategic defence review. And indeed, Jeremy Corbyn has said too that it's part of this strategic defence review, and we know his own position on Trident is different from the Labour Party position. So, in a sense, Trident is not secure.
Well, with all due respect, Emily is not the Shadow Defence Secretary, I am, and we had a long meeting on Thursday at which we agreed the manifesto, and nobody has raised the issue of removing the Trident nuclear deterrent from our manifesto. That was agreed last year, that we would have it as part of our defence review that we had last year, as part of our national policy forum process.
Emily Thornberry said tonight, if you're going to have a review, a proper review, you're going to have a review. And a review, there's no point in reviewing Trident if you're absolutely committed to it.
Well, we are absolutely committed to it.
So therefore Emily Thornberry's wrong?
Indeed, because last year we looked at it in particular at the National Policy Forum, and it was decided that we would keep the nuclear deterrent, and that was reaffirmed at our conference in September, as it has been many years.
We're 3 weeks from a general election. The Shadow Defence Secretary says there is no chance that Trident will not be with us. It is a firm commitment. The Shadow Foreign Secretary says everything's up for grabs, it's for review, and it's possible that it could be scrapped. So we don't know Labour's policy.
Well, I'm being very clear about Labour's policy because it's been reaffirmed year after year. We made a commitment back in 2007 to renew the Trident nuclear deterrent, and that is our position, and that is our commitment to our foreign allies, that is our commitment to our industrial workforce, and that has been reaffirmed year after year after year at Labour Party conference. And again on Thursday when we had the manifesto meeting, it was fully affirmed by the whole room.
So just let's be clear. This is a very serious time. This is not some kind of opposition conversation that's happening, 18 months out from an election. There's an election in 3 weeks' time. Jeremy Corbyn could be Prime Minister. We're going to have a strategic review where Emily Thornberry says everything's up for grabs. It could be that Trident, eventually, if it's going to be reviewed, scrapped, and yet the Shadow Defence Secretary doesn't say that. You weren't even at the manifesto launch.
I was at the manifesto meeting last Thursday, which is when we were actually looking at the detail of this programme. And as
so
I
was
say,
Emily Thornberry not listening?
Not one query was raised about the Trident nuclear deterrent.
Let's move on now. On Andrew Marr's show this month, Jeremy Corbyn was categoric. There will be no first use of nuclear weapons. So it's not a deterrent.
Well, I think it's very, very important that we have the deterrent, and that if you have a deterrent, then you are prepared to use it.
In first
but
use?
Of course, you do everything else before, don't you? You have diplomatic means, you have conventional military means. Nobody in any circumstance would want to put nuclear as your first line of attack.
No, but nobody's suggesting for a minute that actually somebody's going to fire off a missile without giving it the most incredible thought. But what we're saying here is that Jeremy Corbyn said there'd be no first use. It's not a deterrent then, it may as well just be an expensive white elephant. Do you believe that you have to be prepared ultimately for first use if you have nuclear weapons?
You do have to be prepared. That might be the circumstance you may find yourself in the very uncertain world that we live in, and that's why it's absolutely essential that we keep that nuclear deterrent. But as I have said, nobody would put that as the first item on their agenda. What we all need to be doing is making sure that we actually get in quickly to deal with problems so they don't escalate.
Well, let's turn now to NATO. Because there's a manifesto commitment to NATO. Is that the same NATO that Jeremy Corbyn was on record as calling a danger to world peace and a danger to world security?
We are fully committed to NATO. NATO is really the cornerstone of our defence policy, and it's even more important now when we're coming out of the European Union that we reaffirm that policy, and that we're also committed, of course, to the 2% spending commitment, 2% of GDP
Right,
to
so
be spent on defence.
let's just say that NATO is called upon. For example, Russia invades Estonia, then Britain is called upon as a NATO member to put military equipment and personnel in to resolve the situation. Jeremy Corbyn seems to be suggesting that we wouldn't necessarily, in certain circumstances, come to the aid of a NATO member militarily.
We are fully signed up to Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which says that, yes, we would put in that defence.
So he's wrong.
And yes, we would put in that military force. But of course, we all go through the other processes, which are also in that NATO treaty, of diplomatic means first. But yes, ultimately, you have to back up your defence and your support of your NATO allies with Article 5.
What we're saying now is that you say that if you're asked militarily to support, for example, Estonia, there'll be no question. Jeremy Corbyn is not saying that. So I'm going to put it to you. The Tories say that Labour's in chaos. 3 weeks on from an election, there's nothing graver than defence policy. We don't know, one, if there'll be first use of nuclear weapons, and two, we don't know whether militarily Britain will be prepared to come to the aid of another NATO country.
We are fully signed up to our NATO commitments, and that does include Article 5, and that does mean that if the threat were of that nature, then we would put in the military force. And of course, we support the enhanced forward presence which is there in Estonia now.
Neil Griffiths, thank you very much.